there, and welcome to episode 20 of the OGV Energy Let's Talk Transition series of podcasts. I'm Murray Milhuish. I'm one of the principal consultants at Anik Consulting, and we provide our clients with bespoke market research and market entry support into the offshore wind, wave, and tidal markets. Now, today's an exciting show. Not only is it episode 20, but I've got two brilliant guests for you. Norman Johnston, Senior Principal Engineer, and Maisie Tuttle, Process Engineer and Rising Star, both from Kent. Maisie and Norman, thanks for joining us. Can you both introduce yourselves, please? Maisie, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Maisie Tuttle. I'm Process Engineer here at Kent. I've recently completed the graduate scheme at Kent. I work predominantly in energy transition and low carbon technologies.
Great. And Norman?
Hi, Norman Johnston. I'm engineer manager, principal engineer within Kent. I've had a probably a slightly longer career than Maisie has. I'm a chartered civil engineer. I suppose for an interest perspective, I joined Subsea 7 in 2012 in the oil and gas sector, worked there for about 7 years, and then moved across onto offshore wind within Seaway 7, and I was involved in the Seagreen project. I then came to work in Kent as an engineer manager for about a year, and then I went to go to work for a developer for a year in Edinburgh. So I was the balance of plant manager with Tuttle Wind Partners on 2 of their offshore wind farms. And I recently came back to work in Kent. So we can maybe talk about that later in terms of why I came back. But by my career, I've been involved in oil and gas, I've been involved in offshore wind, and various aspects of projects from consent right through to detailed design and delivery.
That's great, Norman. And I see we actually missed each other at Subsea 7 by a very small number of months. So there we go. We narrowly worked together. There we go. And look, Maisie, tell me, Rising Star and hydrogen. Wow, how did that come about? Tell me about it.
Thank you. So I was recently nominated onto the Hydrogen Economists 50 Women in Hydrogen for 2023. So I was nominated in the Rising Star category, which covers women in the first 5 years of their career who are really making an impact into the hydrogen scene at the moment. And my work that allowed me to be nominated was that I was part of the HyNet project. So for people who don't know, HyNet is the UK's leading decarbonisation project. And we're looking at producing blue hydrogen at an oil refinery in the northwest of England. So that takes fuel gas from the refinery, it produces blue hydrogen, captures the carbon, which gets sequestered, and it produces clean energy for the region in terms of industry, heating people's homes, transport. So I modelled their fuel gas systems to ensure that the refinery can still operate day to day with the introduction of this new hydrogen plant.
That's brilliant. So, Kent's obviously involved in low carbon hydrogen. And Norman, you've just mentioned that you've worked across, contractors and developers and consultancies. How else is Kent supporting the energy transition? And, tell us more about the footprint of the company and its activities.
Yeah, so Kent is involved from the oil and gas market, I suppose, the sort of traditional hydrocarbon market, right through the whole transition to design and delivery of offshore wind farms. I suppose as you sort of transition through from that hydrocarbon traditional, what happens at a refinery, what happens in terms of production from oil and gas, you kind of move into probably the first part of this, which is to do with projects like INTOG. So we're involved in some of the INTOG projects. And we're also aware of flotation energy and what they're involved in the Green Float project and the CNOS project. So the ability to support our clients in how they would decarbonize, how they would electrify an oil and gas platform with potentially switching off their gas turbines that power the platform and providing a electric supply direct to that would come from an offshore wind farm. So that's maybe one example. We're involved in carbon capture. So the projects where from refineries, production facilities, power generation facilities, where carbon is produced from potentially gas, that carbon dioxide can be captured and then put back down subsea. So we're involved in from, I suppose, the pre-FEED concept stage through to the engineering stage as well of these projects. What Maisie is involved in terms of hydrogen, and that's from, as well as what she's involved in onshore, we're looking at it from an offshore perspective as well. So potentially using or producing green hydrogen from electricity generated from an offshore wind farm. And then as you keep going to the right, in terms of, let's go completely green, you have your offshore wind farms. So that's where I work and that's what I'm involved in. We've been involved in doing the design for some of the major projects. We're involved in the design of the foundation for the Beatrice project, which is one of the first offshore wind farms that SSE built. And we're involved in the current round of ScotWind projects as well, plus other projects internationally. And that's for the design of the foundations for fixed bottom jackets in shallower water, monopiles in shallower water, and also floating offshore wind farms. And we take it from concept stage. So a client might come to us and say, we have an idea, we want to go and build this offshore wind farm. It could be an option lease application, looking at the costing, financial models behind it all, and we'll help them come up with that from an engineering appraisal through to the commercial appraisal, and give them the information that allows them to make some of their decisions around what they would do, right through to we're about to go and build this jacket and we need drawings which can be given to a fabricator. And then also right through to on the St. Brewick project, where we're involved in providing support to the installation contractor. So they had built the jackets, they would come back to us and say, we've maybe got a problem or a challenge on a sea fastening or a grillage design, or they went to go and install this subsea and they discovered the ground conditions were different. And we will support them right through to the completion and commissioning of these projects as well.
Right, so it's actually quite a comprehensive package of support that you're providing, and it's all about engineering, right?
I suppose it is, yeah. So we're divided into a consultancy business and a kind of engineering business. So I work on the consultancy side, so we provide that consultancy design services to our clients, and then Maisie, you're involved in the engineering side.
Yeah, that's right. So I started in consultancy and then made the jump to engineering.
Aha, there we go. And it's quite a big company, isn't it? What sort of footprint has it got?
So we're currently at about 13,000 employees, and we operate in, I think, 34 countries across the world.
So it's a big company. And, Maisie, you mentioned you'd recently done the graduate traineeship. Brilliant. Tell us about your degree and your experience of, why did you choose Kent? Why did you choose to be involved in the energy transition? And actually, why does the energy transition matter to you?
So I went to University of Manchester, did chemical engineering, graduated during the pandemic, which was tough. And for me, finishing university and like looking at job prospects, I really wanted to work in an industry where I knew that I was making a difference and improving the industry for my 30, 40-year career that I have ahead of me. So I really wanted a company that stood out. You can go to many companies and you work on big projects and you work with big clients and you get involved from the get-go. A lot of companies do that, but Kent to me stood out as being really caring about what projects they work on and bringing in projects that were low carbon technologies or within energy transition, or even the kind of more traditional oil and gas work that we do, a lot of this is around decarbonisation. How can we make things more efficient? Because you can't suddenly stop using oil and gas. The world would just come to a standstill. We need to still be providing the energy that the world needs, but in a more sustainable way, and a way that means that we can continue meeting these needs in the future. And I think for me, it's that culture of always wanting to make a difference, and always do everything that we do is through the eyes of being more sustainable and really making an impact. And that culture is what stood out for me as for Kent as a company. That's why it stood out.
Great. So Maisie, your graduate traineeship, tell us what that included.
So the Kent grad scheme is 3 years. And from the beginning, you are put on real life projects with real life clients. You get 3 years of structured training. So you complete modules and get outside external learning that kind of builds on each year that you're within the scheme. You get a lot of good technical experience. There's a whole host of courses that you can go on to further your education. And apart from that, across the whole company, there's a really strong community of graduates. So you don't feel like you're one of 5 graduates in an office. You have engagement with all grads in your office, all grads in your country, and all grads in the UK. And I think that's been helped by, the world of Teams and online platforms. And it's really good to kind of, if you're struggling with something, there are so many people that you can reach out to. And I found that really helpful as a graduate starting during the pandemic, starting fully online. I never felt isolated. I always had a really good network around me.
Brilliant. And how many graduates are involved in this scheme?
I go globally, I don't know. I think there were 13 new graduates that started in the UK this year.
Great. And, it seems to me that to deliver on the promise of the energy transition, and actually the requirement of transitioning to, we need a lot more new talent. What can companies do to encourage more graduates, more new entrants to want to make their careers in the energy transition?
I think for me, it's having a mixture of the feed work that we do, the really detailed things that we do, but also the kind of research side of things. So doing conceptual studies and feasibility studies. So you see these technologies through a whole kind of phase of readiness, I guess, because an idea or a concept can be created and then it's 10 years before you see that being built. So being able to work on things that are being built and designed now to make an impact right now, but also working on technologies that are going to come in 10 years down the line.
Great. So So part of that then is the variety of the type of work that they can work on. Is that one of the things that's attracting graduates to the transition?
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. And Norman, Maisie mentioned, the oil and gas industry, of course, as being, part of that transition. How important, in your experience, are those learnings from oil and gas to the energy transition?
Yeah, I mean, having made the transition, you initially think that it's actually going to be quite straightforward. I work in oil and gas, and I've done large EPCI contracts with major operators offshore, and use diving vessels and construction vessels and ROV construction vessels, and you think, well, yeah, I know a fair bit. I've been involved in big fabrication jobs, and then you move into offshore wind, and then you realize actually there's some of the core skills within oil and gas are actually pretty kind of fundamental to what we're doing with an offshore wind. But there's then another level of knowledge you need to kind of add on to that to be able to, especially if you're involved in the design of a foundation and you're a structural engineer or you're a project engineer that's been involved in oil and gas projects. So you need to, I suppose, supplement these skills and make that conversion across from oil and gas into offshore wind. A lot of really good engineers I've come across in the oil and gas sector. A lot of the guys who work maybe I'm based in the office here in Aberdeen, and we have a lot of structural engineers who are here. So still are involved in a lot of the maintenance and decommissioning tasks that happen on some of the larger oil and gas platforms. So they understand structures, they understand what it's like to build something offshore, they understand what it's like to maintain something offshore. So when they get involved in doing the design for a new offshore wind farm, and it happens to be a 3-leg pin pile jacket, they understand the basics behind what has to happen, they understand the environment it's got to go into, they understand the kind of discipline behind the methodologies and transportation and installation and fabrication, so it's not completely alien to them. And when you get involved in installations, when you get involved in the kind of final stage of let's go and put this sea green offshore wind farm in and install it, working with vessels offshore and all of the safety aspects, all of the construction aspects, all of the transportation aspects are quite similar. There's a lot of common themes there. So what I've found when I was working in Tuttle Wind, we ran a supply chain event in October last year, and it was to get all the suppliers and all the developers to come to meet us as a developer. It was the week of floating offshore wind at the P&J up in Aberdeen, and we had, I don't know, 150 to 200 people came to see us, and everyone wants to make this transition. Everyone. So there's a lot of people working in the oil and gas industry and supply chain, a lot of guys working in EPCI contractors, other designers, and they all want to make the move because they see that things are moving towards offshore renewables. The oil and gas industry is still here, but they want to be involved in the new chapters that will come along. So I saw a workforce that was in Aberdeen, in the Grampian area within Aberdeenshire, Aberdeen city area, all really keen to make that transition, to make that move across. So we have in Aberdeen, we have a lot of people here who are kind of sitting on that edge of well, I'm currently oil and gas, and I've got a job for the next maybe 5 years or 10 years, however long it's going to be, but they want to make that move across. So they need to think about what skills they've got, how they supplement them and add on the additional offshore wind skills or potentially hydrogen skills or other carbon capture skills. And they are very quickly up and ready to be somebody that could come to work in a design consultant or somebody who could work in that sort of transition space. I think as time goes on, we're going to see that transition happen. There's still a pullback with what happened with the Ukraine war this year and the high price of oil, and I suppose the operators are all wanting to go and maybe make some more money and invest in more oil. So there's been a little bit of an upsurge in that industry. So a few people are, well, stay here for just now, but they're still in the back of their mind thinking about this transition. So to kind of answer your question, to have good fundamental engineering skills in what you need to understand for subsea construction, for oil and gas, the methodologies, all of the transportation, all the vessels, everything that happens is a very, very good starting point to move into offshore wind.
Brilliant. Good overview. Thank you for that, Norman. And Maisie, with your hydrogen rising star hat on, I'm intrigued to, when I look at the hydrogen industry, I see a huge variety of opinion about it. I see some people thinking it's the holy grail of the energy transition and it's going to save us all from doom and destruction. And other people just saying it's absolute hype, nonsense, hyperbole. What is it? Tell us about hydrogen. Why does it matter? How important is it to us?
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of these opinions as well. I'd probably use HyNet as an example. You know, take the refinery where HyNet is based, produces, I think, 16% of the UK's petrol and diesel. And it's essential for the economy and all of us to keep going. And we can decarbonize that huge part of industry by using blue hydrogen with carbon capture, going hand in hand. And I think to do that on that kind of scale is great. And I know people say, why do blue hydrogen? Why not do green hydrogen? But to be able to do something on that scale, green hydrogen is not there yet. And I know within Kent, we're working on green hydrogen projects. And green hydrogen, in terms of hydrogen, is definitely the way to go. But if it's not there yet, but we can do blue hydrogen, I think why not? If we do blue hydrogen, we get the infrastructure that's needed as part of HyNet. We're doing hydrogen villages. We're trying to get hydrogen into people's homes, hydrogen for transport. And then once the green hydrogen kind of gets to an economically viable scale, we can just replace the blue with the green. And I think why wait until, you know, we're 100% there with green hydrogen when we can get the ball rolling with blue hydrogen projects?
Maisie, you mentioned people having hydrogen in their homes. And of course, I've got gas in my home, but not hydrogen. But I was a little bit surprised at how reluctant some people are to have hydrogen in their homes. Yeah, what's your take on that? Would you have hydrogen in your homes?
Let me maybe answer that a little bit of that question. I've watched a few of the documentaries that have been on television recently, looking at I suppose the challenges being put back, the risks being highlighted, and then you then get the other argument, well, actually, your house is actually set up to work with gas, and gas is pretty flammable, and can also be quite dangerous. And then they start talking about hydrogen, and then they kind of came to the conclusion that actually the majority of houses would probably be pretty up there in terms of they could convert to hydrogen just now. There are some safety factors that have to be considered, but from the general public's perspective, I think the views that you pick up on social media, the views you pick up in stories in the press, and the press love to tell a good story, tend to slant it towards this is maybe not such a good thing to have, and do you want to be the first one to try it? And it's a little bit like the electric cars, you know. So there's been some people who have been, you know, early adopters of electric cars, and other people who have said, I'm going to stick with my standard petrol engine car because I don't want to change. I think as time goes on, you'll see people becoming a little bit more accepting of the fact that we have to change. There's a reason behind this, and the reason's all to do with global warming, and the reason's to do with the economy. And they're diametrically opposed. So you need to keep the economy going. You need to also save the planet. So hydrogen, blue hydrogen, in terms of what's happening, where we take carbon dioxide and other gases and other emissions out from industry in a way that we can make it more carbon neutral as part of the solution. The use of blue hydrogen from that is the first move towards changing us away from using gas, a hydrocarbon, to make us more environmentally friendly. And when green hydrogen comes along, when we now start to produce enough electricity offshore that we can do it economically, we can then make that transition across to using green hydrogen. There are whole debates around, shouldn't you just use the electricity for air source heat pumps and not convert it into hydrogen? Well, look at the number of people that have got gas in their houses. There's a reason for that as well. So I think as the scale and the economy grows, you'll see a trend like electric cars towards it becoming a little bit more of the norm. There's always somebody's got to pick it up and start with it. And if you try and push this onto the public, they're all going to say, nah, I want to stick with my gas. I've had my gas for all my life. I know what it's like. But it's a little bit of the fear of the unknown, a little bit of the fear of don't want to change. But I think as the transition starts to build momentum, as people see the reason to do it off the back of the need to stop warming the planet, stop having all these big fires we had down in southern Med this year and maybe elsewhere in the world in Hawaii. We need to make a real conscious effort to do this. So I think the transition's moving in the right direction. We just need to make sure that we send the right messages out around the change to hydrogen and make sure it's successful. And I think it will be. I'm pretty sure it will be.
Great. So it sounds like public perception is one of the barriers to the energy transition, one of those challenges that we need to overcome. Are there any other challenges and barriers that you see with the energy transition just now?
There is in relation to the challenges on offshore wind farms. So the two large challenges just now that are maybe holding things up are getting consent and also getting the grid connection. And the grid connection then ties back into making sure that our national network for distribution of power is sufficiently big enough to take all of this new energy we're going to generate. So these are challenges. So the consenting process takes time, takes effort, and potentially stops projects moving along as quickly as they might want to do. But one of the big ones is the grid connection. So how we try to resolve that issue and making sure that we've got an onshore network, an offshore network that's capable of carrying all the power around the UK, not just from where it comes onshore. In Scotland, for example, it needs to get down to the central belt of Scotland. It needs to get further into England as well.
Great. And what are the technologies that you consider will be pivotal in the energy transition?
Okay. So to answer your question, the introduction of floating offshore wind, so moving the offshore wind turbines further offshore into areas where there's more wind more often. The challenge has always been that you can only go so far before you run out of, you don't run out of seabed water depth. It just gets too deep to construct and do it commercially viable. So the floating offshore wind foundations and what's going to happen as part of the ScotWind project. I watched your podcast with Flotation Energy on Kincardine, and I drive past that on the way to Aberdeen most days. So it's really good to see that we've got a good demonstration project there of a wind farm that's working, floating wind farm that's working, that's generating power. The next generation of these, which will happen as part of the ScotWind projects, will be transformational. And if you look at other countries, if you go to North America, to California, you're very, very quickly, as you head into the Pacific, into deeper waters, they can only use floating wind. And there's other countries as well. So you go into Australia, you're very quickly, if you go offshore there, you can get into deeper waters as well. And you're right on that cusp of, do you use a floater or do you use a jacket? So I think that will transform things. If we can get into where the wind is, generate more power, I think as the fabrication of the foundations moves into a serial fabrication type model, you'll find that the cost will come down. And that's certainly going to help be able to deliver some of the projects and change things.
Brilliant. And, as you'll know from watching some of the episodes of the podcast, I'm pretty passionate about encouraging as many people, as much new talent as possible, whether they're from universities and colleges or whether they're from, the armed forces or from other industries, to come and join the energy transition, because I think it's pretty important. So, for individuals looking to get involved in the transition, what skills and knowledge would you say they should focus on? Maisie, do you want to go first? Because, of course, you've relatively recently joined the transition.
So I've been graduated from uni 3 years now, and obviously you need to have good technical skills to be able to deliver projects. But these skills need to be transferable. You need to be able to think outside the box because we're going through an energy transition. We're doing new things all the time. We're taking old concepts and applying them to new situations. So I think the ability to, think outside the box and apply things in a bit of a different way to what you're used to would probably be the one that I'd say.
Brilliant. And Norman?
Oh, well, let's start at the bottom and work up. Geotechnical engineers, people who can understand the ground conditions for foundations, who can look at ground interpretation models and can understand what's there for the engineer to then go and design the foundations. We have a shortage of really good geotechnical engineers. We really need them. Then as you move into the piles or the suction cans or the ground anchors for flotation, you move into structural engineers, mechanical engineers who can understand structural design and component design, and we have a big need for them. We need good structural, mechanical, civil engineers who understand how to go and design and build structures. Offshore wind, it produces electricity, right? The structure is just there to put a turbine on top to generate the power to bring a cable back to give us the power. So electrical engineers, people who can understand all of the high voltage design, the low voltage design, all of the cabling, how they can be installed, how they can be terminated, how they can be commissioned and be managed and maintained. We need electrical engineers as well to be able to go and do that. And then you then get into the people required for fabrication. So people who understand materials, who understand coatings, paint, who understand cathodic protection systems, all of the ancillary systems that are required to go on to a jacket to make a jacket work offshore. Without the fabrication skills, we can't build them. We need welders in fabrication yards to be able to go, and we need a lot of welders to be able to go and weld some of these large structures if we want to do it in Scotland. I suppose the more traditional fabrication skills, when you get into things like people doing painting, so there's a whole range of skills required on the fabrication side that wouldn't be employed by Kent, but the industry requires all of these. And historically, if you go back many years when we had some of the large fabrication yards for oil and gas, we had them. And then slowly we stopped making jackets, and the jackets were built internationally, and we lost these skills. We're going to have to skill back up for them as well. So there's a wide range of expertise required from technical discipline, graduate engineers, and across the whole range of engineering skills to be able to design, deliver, fabricate, and install and deliver these projects.
Great. And let's think about advice for a second. What advice would you have for young professionals who are passionate about making a positive impact in this field, in the energy transition?
If you're at university and you're potentially third year into fourth year, I would be looking to try to get a summer internship, working with either a design consultant or contractor or developer. Come to work for Kent. We bring summer internships in. We're very good at that. We like to bring them in third year, between third and fourth year, give them an insight into what it would be like to work for a design consultant, to give them some exposure to some projects and to maybe some technical challenges, and to give them a flavour of what it's like to work for Kent. Then, as they then go on to their fourth year and potentially go on to get their honours degree and graduate, and come back as a graduate. So we make that, I suppose, that kind of introduction as a summer internship, gives them a flavour of what it's like to work for us. But there's a lot of companies do that. If you want to work in design, consultancy, engineering, we're very well placed for being able to provide that. We've got a very good range of different types of graduates. And we'll probably come on and talk about our diversity and inclusion shortly, but it's something that we kind of major on in this organization, and it's something that a lot of the younger generation feel very passionate about. So you have your values, you have your culture, you have your technical skills. As a company, we try and bring these together.
Great. And Maisie, I saw you nodding there, but what's your take? Go on. What advice would you have for young professionals, passionate about making a positive impact?
Oh, well, I was just gonna say, I did a summer placement, and I definitely found that it kind of solidified knowing that this is something that I wanted to do as a career, knowing that I really enjoyed it. And I think that's the main thing. You have to enjoy your work. You have to be passionate about what you do. And, you show up to work 5 days a week. And if you don't enjoy it, it's going to be awful. So I think you find something you're passionate about, find people that you can get passionate about the work with. My favorite thing about coming to work at Kent is the team that I work with, and spending so much time with everyone who has, a common goal.
Well, that's a good answer. Thank you, Maisie. And what advice would you have if you could look back and give yourself advice? What advice would you give to your younger self?
I would try to encourage myself to be more diverse within the type of work that I was involved in. I spent quite a few years working in different companies, staying for quite a few years, and working on big projects that lasted quite a few years. So if you're really keen to learn, being able to get involved in different projects at different times gives you a wider view of what you're getting involved in. So to be able to come to work for a company that will give you that, I want to work on a concept design, or I want to work on a pre-feed, or I want to work in detailed design. But I would try to make sure that you don't get stuck in the same project until it's built and it takes 5 years to get built. So I would try to have been a little bit more focused on getting the experience to get my career to a level that I've been able to have gone and work on something. If you're passionate about something, it makes a huge difference to getting up in the morning, and find that passion, find that drive, find that what gets you up in the morning, and makes you want to come to work. And you'll find if you're an engineer, you're working in whatever discipline it's going to be, there will be something within that. There was the reason why you went to university, which is the reason why you want to maybe get involved in the energy transition, which is the reason why you want to come to work. Try and find that. So having that diversity of doing different things, you will find it. And then when you get there, you'll be, oh, this is great. I can do this for a few years. So I'm really going to enjoy it.
Right. And how about you, Maisie?
I would say never stop being curious. Always ask questions. I remember when I first started, I looked to more senior people thinking, God, they must know everything there is to know about everything. And I quickly realized no one knows everything. And as a graduate, I feel like sometimes you can come from university into the industry and it's such a big jump. It's so different doing real life work to doing tutorials that your lecturer has set. And you can sometimes come and think, I don't know anything. It's like the imposter syndrome of thinking everyone else must be so brilliant to be at the position that they're at. And then you realize, no, they're learning things every day as well. You never stop learning. So I think, continue to just ask questions, however silly you think they are.
Brilliant. Ask questions, be curious, and never stop learning. I like that, Maisie.
Yes.
Good advice indeed. Tell me, both of you, I'm always interested in success and, how successful people like yourselves view success. So how do you define success for yourselves? Maisie, do you want to go first with this one?
Yeah, sure. I think for me personally, if I always like to think at the end of the week, if I feel like I have, given everything my all, being productive, and I feel fulfilled at work. That's what I define a successful week.
Great.
So you can meet your targets and you can meet your deadlines, but the thing that tops it off for me is if I feel like I'm proud of myself at the end of the week and I feel fulfilled in what I've done.
Perfect. And Norman, how about you?
Enjoy what you do. So if you enjoy what you do, you will do a really good job. You will give your all. You will come, the whole of you will come to work in the morning, and you will give everything. And when you do that, be it writing a proposal for a tender for a client, be it delivering a concept design or doing detailed design work and producing fabrication drawings to go to a fabricator, when you're involved in doing that and you enjoy doing what you're doing, you will finish the week at the end of the week and you will think that's been really good. I've accomplished what I need to go and do. If you're a manager, and as you work up through your career, I've managed some quite large teams. Make sure they also enjoy what they're doing. Make sure that they're getting satisfaction out of all of this. And when you can get the team to work as a manager and you leave on a Friday and it all just hits that nice kind of all the ducks all line up and it all works, it's a really nice feeling. Really nice feeling to get the team all pull in one direction, and then you get the success of the team rather than the success of the individual. And for me, that's what I feel I made the difference if I do that. If I come to work and I can do what I can do, I can bring the team together, I can bring myself together, I can deliver the project, I can make the client happy in terms of what they're looking for. That's success.
Brilliant, making a difference for the team. I like that one too. Magic. And Maisie and Norman, as you know, in each episode of the podcast, we ask our guests to set a question for the next guest without knowing who they're going to be. And in the last episode, we met with Carlos Martin Rivas, the Chief Executive Officer of Bluefloat Energy, the offshore wind and onshore wind. So I'm going to say that again. We met with Carlos Martin Rivas, the Chief Executive Officer of Bluefloat Energy, the fixed and floating wind project developer. And he left the following question for you. Diversity is a key element for success in any company. What does diversity mean for you and your organization? And what are your actions or plans to ensure diversity in your company? Who's going to answer this one?
Firstly, I'd like to start by saying I think everyone at the company would completely agree. Diversity is key to success in a work environment. And I'd like to speak on my experience of diversity and inclusion at Kent. So I think diversity and inclusion is all about being seen and heard and not facing discrimination. And I feel like as a woman in engineering, every day when I come to work at Kent, I feel championed to be there. There's many women in the company that are successful role models that I look up to, not only within my team, but within senior leadership, on the board. One of those people is our VP of Inclusion and Belonging, Karen Blanc, who I've worked with in my career through. We work in the same office, and I looked up to her and think that is where I can go in the company. And there are no roadblocks or challenges in my way, because if she can do it, I can do it. And, Kent really champions me to feel that way. They recently did a piece on me for Women in Engineering Day. There's a whole network of women across the company that I can find for mentors or advice if I ever needed it. And it really makes a great place to work.
Oh, brilliant. That's great to hear that Kent's doing that. That's fantastic. And Norman, what do you have to add to that? Tell us, what are the actions and plans to ensure diversity and what does it mean for the organization?
So we use the embassy model we follow that in terms of inclusion and belonging. It's something that allows us to try and kind of take a strategy, turn it into a reality in terms of what we're trying to achieve. And we're very conscious that you could just put down a strategy and you could say this is what we're going to go and do, and then you can stick it in a top drawer and then just crack on with what you do every day. Kent does not do that. It really does not do that. We've had a recent presentation from a woman about inclusion and disability. And it was one of the most enlightening presentations I think I'd seen. She put a perspective on it that made you really think about if you are trying to include people, you need to include everybody, and the strategies behind how you try to achieve that. And so these are being embodied within what we do as a company, trying to encourage. We work internationally, and the people that work internationally are all treated the same. So everybody feels very welcome. The culture in the company is very, very strong. If you're working on a small team or working on a large team, it's very evident when you're here that people really care about what you think, and they go out of their way to include you and to make you feel welcome. It's really good to experience. And I think from a company perspective, when we're looking to try to, we really practice this. We really do live up to this. We're on various gender equality boards, Black minority ethnic engineering. We're on a tech talent charter for diversity inclusion for technology roles. We really live the values and put these things into practice. I mentioned at the beginning of the interview that I used to work for Kent, and I left Kent. I went to go to work for a developer. Well, I still live in Aberdeenshire. I lived in Aberdeenshire since 1999, and I came back to be from Edinburgh back to Aberdeenshire to work in Kent because of the culture of the company. I think it's second to none. It attracts the graduate engineers when they come here because they see they can be part of this. It attracts women into engineering. I think this is fundamental. I really do. And anyone from an ethnic, Black cultural background, we employ a lot of people from that background as well. So we have a much wider range of people who we try to, I suppose, take them through their careers within Kent and give them the values they can live up to so that we can deliver the projects we've got to do. So, and it works.
It's great to hear. And ahead of recording today, I asked if you could kindly set a question for my next guest. And of course, no, you can. No, I won't tell you who it is. But could you let us have the question, please?
We did ask that question. So can we ask you who it's going to be before we say, because we've got a list of questions.
Go on,
Maisie,
I think our question to whoever it may be would be that with the rise of AI technologies and the progression that they're making, how do you see AI being a part of the energy transition, and how can that help us progress quicker to cleaner energy and renewable energy?
Good question, and very topical too. That is interesting. Well, I look forward to finding out what the answer is. So there we go. Sorry, Norman, I just cut you off there.
It's okay. I was just going to say we didn't use ChatGPT to work out that question.
we have had one guest openly admit that ChatGPT came up with their question. But there we go. That's honesty is the most important part of that, isn't it? So there. Great. So that brings us to the end of our recording today. And, I'd like to thank you both, Maisie Tuttle and Norman Johnston of Kent for joining me today. It's been really interesting, Maisie, you as the rising star, the recent graduate, and, to hear how you've been embraced and encouraged and mentored through Kent. That's been brilliant. And Norman, of course, nearly one of my colleagues of the past. But interesting to hear about your progression from consultancy through contractor and developer and back to consultancy. So really interesting and lots of really interesting knowledge there. So thank you for sharing that with us today. So look, as always, feedback on today's podcast would be most welcome. Please keep your suggestions for questions coming and for who we should be inviting on the show next. A lot of you get in touch through LinkedIn. Keep that coming. That's great. Or of course, it's Murray. That's Moray at addict.consulting.com. And just before I go, don't forget. On the 8th of November, OGB Energy is hosting an energy transition jobs fair in Edinburgh. So if you know anybody passionate about employing the next generation of talent for the energy transition, or if you know anybody looking to leave college, leave university, leave the armed forces, whatever, get them to come along, get them involved. 8th of November, Edinburgh City Centre. Hope to see you there. Thank you very much.